Okay, it is now 7:30 and we are coming to order on September 21st, 2023. The first thing that we want to do is hear whatever residents have to say. We have had a few comments on the charter amendments that I will mention them when that item comes up. But we do want to hear from people in advance so we have time to consider them. And we even had the opportunity to take people's comments and get a review by our council of them. So do we have any residents now wanting to comment? I see Peter Kahn's hand up. We unmute
my hand was not up, but now it is.
Your hand is not up. Okay. Anyone else? Michael, anybody else we see?
I see Peter Kahn.
Peter said his hand is not up. He took it down.
I'm sorry, what?
Peter, do you have a question or comment?
Yes, I do.
Oh, you do? Okay.
I was surprised to see the ethics ordinance back on the agenda for this meeting. As I know you all remember, the council reviewed this proposal some time ago and chose not to proceed with it, voted against it. And I agree with that, and I think there is nothing changed. There's no reason to proceed at this time with any changes to what the council has already decided. I think that this proposal has some negative effects on the village, and I think it's completely unnecessary. Let me explain what I mean.
Peter, we are giving roughly 20 minutes to opening comments. Could you be brief and summarize your points?
Okay, sure. Basically, I believe that the ethics ordinance, as it currently stands, has a couple of negative effects. I think it undermines community by having neighbors investigate and judge neighbors. I think it creates inappropriate power relationships, and I think it has been detrimental to volunteerism in the community. And I feel confident that that's true. My understanding was that there was going to be a village survey. The annual village survey would include questions about the impact of this ordinance on volunteerism. And so I'm surprised to see that we seem to be proceeding with this in the absence of that information. So I'm concerned about that. And it seems to me that we need to have no concern about ethics in the village because we've never had a serious ethics violation before the ordinance was adopted. We've never had one since the ordinance was adopted. The council can always remove people if it believes that to be appropriate, and can choose to keep people off the committees if it chooses to do so. And we've already had at least one example of the council trying to do that. Third, I think that there are county procedures that work perfectly well that do not involve the power relationships within the village or this business of neighbors judging and investigating each other, that I think is very detrimental. And I think that if we really believe that we need an ethics ordinance, that's a more appropriate way to go. So okay. I'm opposed to the existing ordinance, and I think expanding it without further information, we don't know how well this thing works, what effect it's really having on the village. I think it's a serious mistake. That's my comment.
Peter, let me respond very briefly to that because we'll talk more about it when it comes up. I was the one who decided to introduce, and it's going to be up to my colleagues on the council whether to accept the introduction, and finally, when we come to vote, whether to vote on it. On the volunteers, we had 28 volunteers for the last volunteer call-up. Back before we even had an ethics committee, when it was the Ethics and Elections Committee, it was a challenge to get 3. I was on the phone on list of people, seeing if they could volunteer for the at the time, Combined Ethics Election Committee. So we've gone from 3 to 28. I don't see that has any effect on people's volunteering. And we will have questions on the survey, and we will not vote until we have that survey completed. So we will have more information at that time. Okay, any other, anyone else have their hands up? I see, is that Susan?
Hi. Hi, thank you. I also wanted to weigh in or give some thoughts about the voter eligibility adjustment that was going to be made in the charter. And one of the things I was thinking is that the term permanent abode, I think is a little bit, it's a little bit more vague than something like primary residence, or at least just residence, because what's permanent is, I guess we have such temporary arrangements these days, and people move into a house that's somebody else's, they sell their house. What's permanent, I mean, it's kind of a more subjective term than, say, primary residence. And I think that there's some legal language around primary residence that relates to where you file your taxes. And so I think it gives a little bit more guidance to the election committee to determine who is a resident of Martin's Additions. If we could add language, for example, to the plan saying, and primary residence can be determined, may be determined from a range of factors, including, X, Y, and Z. Income, where income tax is filed, where the resident.
Susan, we have your point. And let me just say that Larry Wasson raised this point. It sounded reasonable. I raised it with our council. And it turns out that the language in the amendment right now is taken from the judicial record. The state of Maryland has used the terms that are in the amendment right now. There are common definitions, whereas primary residence is not one of those terms that are regularly used that have an established set of definitions. So the words that are in there that look a little clumsy to my non-legal eye are there for a reason. It's because there is precedence in Maryland courts. Am I right, Counselor Ron?
Yes, that's right. Now I can read from the case law. You want me to do that now?
No, we don't have to read from, just
When the
say,
item comes up?
yeah, you're right, Art, that's all we do. Okay,
Well, I think, I do think it would be helpful just even to know what is the definition that you would use for permanent abode, so that the election committee could make it actionable in terms of, specific things they would look at. The other comment I had was about the ethics ordinance. I also believe that the council underwent a really rigorous process last year of deliberating about the ethics ordinance and who it would apply to. And I felt like your deliberations were quite genuine and well considered. I don't see a reason to adjust anything about the ordinance right now. I feel that the community showed up, weighed in, a lot of reasons were given. Ron Bolt also consulted that other jurisdictions didn't have this type of ordinance applying to all volunteers throughout the governance area. And so I just felt like there's really not a reason to change it. And I just want to remind everyone there was a petition that 33 residents did sign. And I think that the points of that petition bear repeating very briefly, because I don't see how they have changed. And because they haven't changed, it's unclear to me why you would want to revisit this. It almost seems like you would be overriding not only what the council had done before as a genuine good process of deliberating on this, but also all the input that the community gave to suddenly just say, oh, we're going to revisit this and change it without all that input. It just seems a little unusual to me. The main points of this 33 resident petition that was sent in March 2023 to the council was that expanding the jurisdiction of the ethics committee to cover everyone who volunteers for VMA is unnecessary and inappropriate. There's concern about the effect on volunteering. The current ordinance provides for the Ethics Committee to assess complaints without notifying the council first. And I think that it continues to be a mistake. If you were to change anything, I would change that order. And I think that would improve the situation. And there has been input to that effect. Finally, the ordinance does not require the committee members to have any training or qualifications to conduct ethics investigations, and the recusal provisions are very weak, and it is unclear that there's anything being done to strengthen the recusal provisions. And until they're strengthened, we have a situation of neighbor
Resend that now.
potentially investigating neighbor. So,
Okay,
and
thank you,
finally, the
Susan.
ordinance has no financial cap. So all of those
Thank
points
you.
I think still
I
pertain.
see,
Thank you so
two
much.
more hands up, Marty?
There, I'm unmuted. Thank you. I want to thank Peter and Susan for covering many of the points that I also am concerned about the reemergence of an ethics ordinance expansion again. I thought the council did a good job, made the right decision back in 2021 when you first restricted it to just the, volunteers who have official duties. And again in March 2023, when, as Susan said, you gave it a very good, thorough look at, and again decided correctly, I believe, to not expand the ordinance. And the point about Ron's take on it, I remember Ron saying at the March meeting, I'm quoting you here almost directly, which is that it's that volunteers who don't have official statutory duties generally are not considered government officials and are not subject to ordinances like this. It's just not something that is, routinely or regularly done. And it's weird that we would want to try again to do it. So again, I would urge you to please table and postpone and just, there's no reason to reopen that controversy. I thought that the council was right. On the
Anything
election
else?
stuff, real quick, I want to thank you so much for putting together a really fine election team this year. I'm just so happy with the team. I'm very grateful to you for appointing me to the election committee this year. I'm looking forward to it. We all are. And I also really appreciate the mandate that I see from the council. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I think everybody's really sick of the election turbulence. And the plan is to proceed with the very good 2023 regulations the council approved, which worked well last year, and to have an election that just runs smoothly and transparently. And thank you again for putting together good regulations and a good team. Final question, real quick. This is probably more for Michael. Tuesday this week, 2 days ago, the county council approved the Safe Streets Act, which is something I was a supporter of on the county level, which has a real focus on pedestrian safety, which of course, obviously, I think is where we should be putting a lot of our focus here in Martin's additions. And I'm asking Michael and the council to take a long, hard look. I'm sure you already are. So let me just support you in taking a long, hard look at seeing what we can do about getting more crosswalks and possibly even a pedestrian activated traffic light on Brookville Road. And thank you for that. We should have a crosswalk up at the Thornapple in Brookville, at Bradley in Brookville, and I would love to see a big pedestrian light at the shops. So that's a big deal, that county Street Safety Act, and I hope we will work as closely as possible to make that happen here. And again, I think that's way more important than fooling around with the ethics ordinance yet again.
Right.
Thank you.
The,
Bye.
just one comment on that. A friend of mine who had lived in the village of Chevy Chase worked very hard to get a crosswalk across Connecticut at Lenox, I think. And it took, he worked on it for 5 years. He moved away 5 years ago. 10 years after they started, it was put in. So to get that sort of thing done, it will require at least that length of time.
Well, let's get started now.
Okay, Doug
Thank
or
you.
Hiromi or both?
Hi, thanks. This is Doug, and I'll make this quick. Just two quick questions related to the construction at 3419 Cummings Lane. I've read the packet, Michael. I've read the portion in your report, so I'll just two quick points, questions. One, appreciate that the council is going to review the plans, the revised plans for the microbial retention planter boxes at a public meeting. That's great. Thanks for that. Look forward to that. will those plans be made available to the village, to residents, to us, in advance of that meeting? And I ask because at the residents' meeting for this construction back in March, plans were not circulated beforehand. And the developer, during the meeting, when asked to share the plans on screen, did not, said that they were unable to. For technical reasons or something like that. I think in order to make ensure that that public meeting serves the purpose that it is intended to and needs to, do we have the council's commitment to ensure that those plans are made available prior to the meeting?
Oh, sure. I think, Michael, correct me if I'm wrong here, but the problem is that first of all, typically there are these big paper documents and big PDFs that you just can't pop up onto the screen. But Michael, what's happening with that?
Well, we still haven't received the amended plans, but when we do, I'm happy to make those available to you, Doug, prior to any meeting. Absolutely.
So before we have not yet received amended plans on which we can even have a hearing at this point. So.
Got it. Just if I could just ask, I appreciate that. That's great. Thank you for making them available in advance. Just want to ask that if they are in fact large PDF files that may be difficult to transmit by email, or that we may have to come into the office and make an appointment to look at, could we please just make sure in planning the hearing and scheduling that we just allow enough time to have a reasonable opportunity to do that, rather than just, the day before or something like that.
They'll either be sent out or available in some way or another. So
terrific. Thank you very much. And then second question is, I saw the note on the rear decks, the 2-level decks in the back, that was determined according to the village code, the covered decks should be included in the building coverage calculation. I saw that in Michael, in your report, that there was a determination made that because the double-decker decks did not include a roof, that they should not be included in the building coverage calculation. I'd just like to understand the reasoning a little bit more. Obviously, that may apply to the top deck, but these are 2 decks, one on top of the other. And so the first floor deck is covered by the floor of the second floor deck. They're literally stacked on top of each other. So there would be, there would be no roof to say, well, it would, to expect that there might be a roof on the first deck is I'm not following the logic there. Could you just help us track the reasoning here as to why the first floor deck is not considered a covered deck when effectively the floor of the second floor deck covers it as a roof would?
Yeah. You want to do it?
Well,
I can do it.
I'm happy to take
Yeah,
that
I
one.
mean,
Okay, Ron, go ahead.
Sure. So the council can unilaterally revisit a permit that's been issued. And with respect to the permit that was issued, the council, upon further review, did find that the front porch, because it's covered, should have been included in the calculation of lot coverage. And as a result, that porch is being modified, so it's a portion of it's being modified so that the lot coverage will not be exceeded. With respect to the rear decks, that issue was not revisited by the council. The interpretation that's been applied in the village is that a covering means basically a waterproof roof, something that protects you from the elements. A deck over another deck is not a covering under that ordinary interpretation, because rainwater and the like can go through it. And as originally written, what was intended there was full roof coverings. that protect you from the elements.
So
So
the
it's-
customary usage and definitions did not fit the situation that we have there of what a covered deck is.
Right.
So if I understand correctly, then you have confirmed that the floor of the second floor deck will allow water to fall on the first floor deck, and that is why it's not a roof?
Well, it's not a roof because it is a deck made of deck boards. You know, it's not a roof over top of something else.
So if that's the case, let me just flag and ask, because is it not the case then that what approving this does is, say a builder wants to put a covered deck on the back of the house, and then realizing that that will be included in the building lot coverage and therefore would reduce the square footage allowed, the maximum square footage allowed on the structure, that they can then get around the requirement that a covered deck would be included in the lot coverage by simply creating a double-decker deck instead of just a single covered deck. In other words, isn't this an incentive to obviate the building lot coverage limitations by building two-level decks instead of one-level covered decks?
Possibly. Okay, it is now 10 of our 20 minutes of resident comments is up. If there are more comments, we will give unlimited time, unlimited, at the end of the meeting. So let's move on to the next item on the agenda, manager's report.
Yes, thank you. Okay, I'll keep it short today. We have had a busy last month here in the village office. To help that, Jeff Blander has agreed to help us put together an administrative calendar. Once that's done, with all of the different calendars from the budget cycle and from the holiday events and from the election and all the different things happening around the village for the year, we will publish that, so that will be available.
And we have a first draft of that.
We do. All 5 committees and the tree supervisor have been announced. The council is currently planning a orientation event for all of those volunteers. So we have a good group of volunteers this year, and we're excited about that. Jeff Blander and I attended the kickoff meeting with our auditors for auditing the FY23 year that concluded June 30th. That was a good productive meeting, and we have a timeline to get our audit done by October 31st. So we need to get moving on that. And that's my big to-do item for next week. I will be attending a professional development conference starting at the end of next week. So just a reminder to all of you, I'll be out for a couple days. Under maintenance, I was able to get WSSC to fix a pothole on Raymond Street, and that was quite an accomplishment. So I'm really proud of that. It's way easier to have them do it than us, but it still wasn't easy. So, but speaking of which, we are still scheduling a number of repairs to curbs, a driveway apron that's really damaged, and a driveway apron that we're going to remove. Those are still all being scheduled. We're having some scheduling issues with our paving contractor, but it's in the works, and it's cheaper if we do them all at the same time versus doing them, activating the crews for small projects. So
Mike, can you remind everyone why we're doing the Quincy Street repaving?
yes, I did mention that later on and under special projects as well,
okay.
but that is related because we're trying to do that at the same time as well. Emergency vehicles weren't able to pass, and large construction vehicles weren't able to pass at the dead end of Dellfield. Also snow plowing that was kind of tricky down there. And we came up with a pretty easy solution, not very invasive. We only have to remove one village tree, and we're able to set 2 parking spots that are there in against the sidewalk. There was some thought that we would lose the sidewalk, but that's not the case. The sidewalk will still be there. Actually, we're repairing that sidewalk while we're at it. And we're maintaining all of our parking spaces. So
Okay.
that's a success. We're actually just waiting for the permit to remove that tree. But the contract has already been activated. went out to public bidding, was signed, and we already are ready to go on that. Moving on, the tree planting program is coming, I promise. It's been a little delayed, but I have quite a big list this year of trees, and I'll be working with the arborist to make sure that those are the right trees and then all of those get ordered. And there's the dead end of widening. Brookville Road, you may have seen our surveying crew that we hired out there taking pictures and surveying all of last week. They're currently putting together the report. Once that's done, we'll be ready to, one, go back to the state highway administration with all of our proposals, including a sidewalk at Bradley. I mean, a crosswalk across Brookville at Bradley. We're prepared to do that. We conducted a traffic study, and also we'll be prepared to then hire an engineer to actually design the entire sidewalk. There's lots of tricky elements. Retaining walls will be required at points where it looks like we're going to be able to avoid every single fence and retaining wall that already exists. So that'll save us, damaging or having to repair any private elements that are already there. But that will be a 5-foot wide ADA compliant sidewalk, and we'll engineering team that we'll hire will solve any problems, including water issues, water being stuck behind the sidewalk or water flowing down the sidewalk. There's 2 storm drains along that stretch of street that'll have to be an engineered solution for. So now that the survey is complete, once we have that in hand, we'll be ready to jump to the next step. You might have noticed that Doug Lohmeyer is not on the call tonight. I've just taken over that responsibility of sharing updates as far as building stuff. I'm happy to answer any questions, but there is no new permit applications this month, so that makes this a little bit easier. And I think we can have Doug come to meetings when there's something to talk about specifically, but otherwise we can just keep these meetings moving. We are still expecting 2 variance requests for 3409 Thornapple and 3412 Taylor. Both of those projects seem to have stalled or haven't heard a whole lot recently. So 151 Quincy, I did issue a stop work order because there seemed to be a large amount of water coming to the village right of way, which would in the future, cause a hazard and with any icing. Andrew Cowders and Arthur and I met with the developers the next morning and listened to the developer and heard his plans to, 1, mediate the problem, and then 2, his explanation for why there was more water than expected coming to the street for those times. I then temporarily lifted the stop work order at that meeting or right after that meeting in order to allow the developer to abate the problem. As of this week, it appears there's no water coming to the street or to the right of way at all. So we're monitoring the situation and trying to figure out why exactly that seems to have changed, whether there are problems and explanations explain all of that or whether there's something else going on there. So we're in the middle of that, and I have had my operations manager and Doug, our village engineer over there, and council members have been over there this week. So we're still monitoring that situation.
It's dry. We know that it's dry so far.
Yeah, Michael, just real quickly, I've stopped by there probably a couple of times each day in the last week, either on a bike ride or on my way home from work. And I did speak to a resident, and there's suspicion that they're just hiding the problem and that they might be sending the water to the sewer pipe again. So anyway, we'll find out, but just wanted to report on that based on my conversation yesterday.
Okay.
And that's it for me, unless there's questions. Katie?
Oh, Michael, I'm sorry to interrupt your report. I am having a bit of a family emergency. I just need to run home for
Okay.
5 minutes. You all can time me. I'll be right back. My kids are locked out of the house and my husband is at back to school night. And
Okay.
so I will be right back.
We still have a quorum, so,
I have a
okay.
permit in minutes. I will be right back.
Okay,
I'm so sorry.
Sure.
Wish this were the case.
okay,
He's a runner.
there she goes.
Go over there for her.
Well. she's up to-
Excuses, everyone, just 1 minute.
Okay. Okay.
And that concludes my report. Thank you very much.
Okay, that does it. Okay, turning from that, we have our weather report. And it looks like I am not going to have a happy flight out of Dulles on Saturday afternoon.
Out of flight delays, the distinguished council members, esteemed village manager and residents virtually. The beautiful weather that we've been experiencing the past several days is gonna go downhill very quickly here tomorrow night and on Saturday into Sunday. Right now, there's a storm, a tropical storm or depression about 600 miles south of Annapolis, Maryland at this very moment, moving north. So that it's gonna come up the Chesapeake Bay, move into Anne Arundel County, and then eventually move off to the northeast. We will probably get anywhere from 2 to 4 inches of rain, with the heaviest amounts along and east of I-95, but here in Martin's Additions, at least 2 or 3 inches of rain. And it'll be a windswept rain, winds 30 to 40 miles an hour sustained during the day on Saturday. This could lead to some scattered power outages, some flash flooding, and also some downed, not big trees unless the ground gets very saturated, oversaturated. But there will be smaller limbs and twigs coming down, so there'll be a debris cleanup for Sunday and Monday around here. And after that, next week, it'll be beautiful. In the 70s for highs during the day, even some 40s at night.
Ooh,
So that we can look forward to, but in the meantime, it's gonna be kind of rough here. On especially on Saturday from late tomorrow night into Sunday morning early.
okay.
So are there any questions from the residents or from the council members?
Any,
Now's your chance, Andrew.
Keith, are we expecting lightning because we have some soccer games over the weekend on
There's a
Saturday?
possibility that there could be some scattered thunderstorms. Most of those storms, since we should be on the cold side of this storm as it moves up and stays east of us, and we're in the northeasterly winds. Most of the thunderstorm activity is going to be south of here, where the heaviest impacts will take place. The tropical storm warnings will be posted. I'm predicting for Calvert and St. Mary's counties. But that's a distinct possibility, Andrew.
Okay, thank you.
okay, well,
And
thank
with
you.
that, my time is up. I thank you for yours.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next item, we have 2 sets of minutes for approval. A regular meeting and a closed session where we heard council's advice. So for the August 17th meetings, we had a chance to review these online. Most people send in their approvals. Do I have a motion? I will second that to approve. We have a vote to approve. And so it is 3-0. For the closed session, we had to receive council's advice on the 31st of August. I will move. Good. So everyone's taken care of?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay, I will move to approve the minutes for the August 31st closed meeting that we had with council. Second that, all in favor? Aye, okay, minute. Okay, discussion of our committee. As we noted before, as Michael noted, we had sent out requests for volunteers for our various committees. We had quite a large number of volunteers. We approved 28 separate volunteer assignments, send out emails asking for people to reply. Yes, they did want to accept the nomination or no. 3 people said no for various personal reasons, reconsideration of time. If we did not have a reply to that, I went in and sent further emails saying, are you on or off? And then finally, on Monday morning, send out the invitation for all the committee members. So we don't have, we have, a list was published online. We did send out a notice of everybody that we had invited on. And right now, we are going to have a sit-down orientation session for everyone, September 28th, right?
Mhm.
Where they get instruction in the Open Meetings Act and the Public Records Act, and how to conduct a meeting. And then they have, the committee members have to sign their oaths and conflict of interest forms, and they'll be ready to go. So the liaison members start getting things moving along. I'm trying to get a meeting going of the water committee members. It's always hard to find times when all 5 people can sit down together, but we're trying to do that. So that is the schedule we're coming in our committees and getting moving on all of this. Any other comments? Yeah.
Before any official duties can happen, the oath has to be completed by all members and the conflict of interest
Conflict of
forms.
interest.
I've already been getting scheduling from the different committees. So right now, ethics is planning to be on the October 18th. Elections is October 4th. Still haven't heard anything from community engagement or the water committee.
Yeah, we're trying to get together on that.
Okay, and then the anti-Semitism awareness is going to be hopefully September 27th, if
Okay.
everyone can get their forms in time. That's next
Good.
Wednesday.
And there's already a person on the water committee who has taken the course of the Open Meetings Act and has their certificate. And
Fantastic.
she's putting it on the wall right next to all her diplomas. And so I encourage you all to do that. It is an education.
Mhm.
Anything else to add on committees? Okay, moving on. The annual survey. I've sent out a very preliminary draft of a survey. I want everyone on the committee and the council to take a look at that, make your suggestions, and we should either get together around here in a formal meeting, or we could do it administratively to kind of wrap that up. We want to get that out in the first, second week of October. So we will have survey results in perhaps by the October meeting, but definitely by November meeting. So do we want to do that in a sit-down meeting, or can we do that administratively via email?
Administratively. It's too
Administratively.
hard to get everyone together.
Okay.
I think.
Okay, so look at the drafts, come up with your revisions, come up with questions, surveys. Look at what our communications person here. Look at that and, are there issues that we're missing? I've cut out a number of older questions that no longer seem to have as much relevance as they once did. Look at that. Is that correct? Do we really want to get rid of those, move on to new questions? So yeah, Michael.
I did have a couple of notes from last year's survey, which I started right in the middle of. So I did have some notes about some double-barreled questions and things. I
Right.
have some experience in this, so I
Right.
can actually help with this.
Yeah,
If you wanted me to give it a once-over as well.
right.
And then I had Aaron, our assistant village manager, actually take a webinar from the International City County Management Association on survey development. So we have some recent practices and those types of things. And one of the things I remember from last year's survey as well is it wasn't totally clear if it was one person per household was supposed to fill it out.
To say that, I never understood that. I like every resident has to say.
One person, one vote, one person, one
Right,
survey. Okay,
right.
good.
One person, 5 opinions.
Lori, you have an expertise in survey review.
I do.
Would you like to take a review of it as well?
Um,
The more eyes we get on it, and Jeff also has experience. Okay, so we will get a lot of eyes on this and get well-tailored survey. Okay, so we will be moving forward on that. I will send out another draft before I leave on Saturday, as you go forward. Okay. Okay, charter amendment to amend the village charter to amend the definition of qualified voter. And I did mention, we have a number of resident comments here. One from Susan Kahn, who suggested that we talk about a natural person. We don't want corporations voting. It turns out, in fact, that according to our council, that at least one state, Delaware, does allow corporations to vote in certain elections. And so normally this would not be an issue, but we have added that phrase natural person. Larry Wasson, as I mentioned, and others have suggested that we talk about primary residence as used in some public federal documents. That does not have currency in Maryland state law, but the terms that are in there do have currency and definition and accepted meaning. So that's why we are using the terms that are there. So this was first introduced last February. It is now September, so we've got plenty of time to look at this. We've had plenty of time for resident comments. We will open up one more time for this amendment for resident comments and then proceed to a final vote. So do we have anyone who wants to speak specifically to the amendment to the charter on qualified voters?
Ron Bolt.
Ron has his hand up.
Yes, thank you. So I would just say quickly that when lawyers write legal text, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We want to try and use tried and tested terms. So I use terms from case law. But if a lot of folks are saying that it's unclear or overly legalistic, I would still recommend that we keep the language as is with recognized terms. But in our election rules and other interpretive guidance, we could certainly offer additional clarification in layman's terms. That would be my suggestion.
So these clarifications would take what form?
So, yeah, I would recommend retaining permanent abode in the charter because that is a term that has meaning in case law. But if people find that term confusing or unclear, we could further clarify that in the separate document, which is the election rules. So, we could offer a more user-friendly layperson definition in that secondary document.
Okay. Could we ask you to prepare a document of that sort for our consideration?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yes, absolutely.
Good. Any other comments? And we have any residents who want to offer comment at this point?
Marty has her hand up.
Marty, are you hand up for this or is this a previous hand?
Well, I'll come back to the previous thing at the end of the meeting, but I do want to speak specifically to this and thank you for taking a look at the comments submitted by many residents on this, including me. On the permanent abode issue, that indeed is problematic from an operational point of view because, people who are currently living here have the right to vote, even if they plan to retire in Florida. So permanent abode doesn't really have any operational meaning because, we're all only here temporarily in the great cosmic sense of things. So that's a
getting into philosophical areas.
Indeed, I agree, Arthur. I can live with the terminology if we
Okay.
follow Ron Bolt's advice here, which I completely agree with, which is to specify something that is very practical and operational in the election ordinance. And
Good.
primary residence does have a legal meaning. It's in the tax law rather than election law.
Right.
Primary residence is where you pay your income taxes. So that is legally defined, and I think that gives good reason to use it. My main concern on this is that the election committee needs to be able to know how to decide who gets a ballot. And we can't do it from people's intent to return because that's unknown. We would have to have some kind of documentation that says, that somebody declares that this is their primary residence and that they intend to return and that this is their sole residence for voting, da, da, da. So the election committee needs some kind of document in order to decide who to get And we could use, again, a statement that it's a primary residence for tax purposes, or a declaration, as it said in my note to you, Arthur, back in August about this. But the key issue is that this needs to be operational. You can't just ask the committee to guess.
Okay,
know,
well,
what
this is I think the document that Ron will supply.
Yeah, and I gave you some language for that too.
Okay.
On the rest of the election ordinances changes, since we are looking at the election provisions of the charter, I would strongly urge the council to take this opportunity when we have the charter amendments open to remove that language that's in section 602G about the authority to cancel some elections. There is really no justification in this day and age for canceling any election short of thermonuclear war. And I have been troubled by that phrase. It was added in April 2020 using the pandemic waiver. There was never any public discussion or public hearing about adding that power. And it's been a sore point for a lot of residents. I hear about it all the time.
Okay, well, Marty, that would be another discussion for another time. We would have to introduce a new budget, a new charter amendment, and that would have to go through this course.
You can't include it in this one. It's about election
No, we can't,
procedures.
no, we cannot bolt that on to this right now. We have never considered it. It hasn't come up. It hasn't gone before the residents. It has to go through the full procedure.
Well, I would encourage you to do that because it is a sore point for a lot of people.
Okay.
And finally, on the election changes, thank you for putting in the draft the word natural person. That's something that we have always done informally, but it's great to have that that language in the charter,
Right.
because Delaware does allow corporations to vote, and we don't want to do that here.
Right.
So again, and I want to thank you very much for putting together a very good committee and good regulations for this year. Thank
Okay, well, thank you. And I think, what, go ahead, anything? It's time to bring this to a vote. So what is our process here? We will introduce this for final vote. Will somebody move to introduce this charter?
To adopt.
To adopt.
To adopt, to
Yeah.
finally to adopt. And it is charter amendment number 2023-1. You move to
Okay, so-
adopt.
I'll second.
Second, all in favor of this charter amendment to it?
Right.
I see all hands up, so it is adopted. So since February, it's been 7 months. Good. The next item on the agenda, move to introduce an ordinance to amend the ethics ordinance to expand the definition of official to include members of all committees and ad hoc committees appointed by the council. Let me just say, I was the one who suggested doing this, and it's up to my council members whether they want to move it going forward and finally to adopt it. And the reasons I had, at the time I voted against this last February, I had a large number of arguments for it that seemed pretty convincing. The one in my own mind that weighted against the positive ones was that it increased government structure. That we're a small village, do we need all of the structure? Well, on further reflection, I see the structure is already there. It's already in the code. The due process, the procedures are already there in the code. The changes right now are very minimal. I've also found that the arguments against were specious and wrong. Most of the points that were raised in the petition, whether people would lose their top secret security clearances, whether it was going to destroy volunteers, and so on, were either beside the point, specious, or incorrect. And so as I reconsidered, I thought that the arguments for outweighed the arguments against. And so that's why I'm moving to reconsider it. But it's up to my council members whether they want to reconsider it. We have a number of residents who are strongly against it. And so at this time, I will simply, yes.
Could I just read a short statement, just to address some of the things that have come up? Before you vote on it?
Well, we're not voting on it. All we're doing right now is introducing.
Right, but before you vote to introduce it, I just had a couple of misconceptions. First, I wanted to thank you for even reconsidering it. But I agree with you that there is a misconception that it's an expansion of the law. Since 2019 and again in 2023, the council has voted to require that all volunteers take the oath of office and fill out a conflict of interest statement. That means they're all responsible for the same things anyway, except some people don't have a defined process and other people do. It's, for consistency, it should mean the same thing for everyone.
And that was the other argument I was going to make for consistency
Same,
purposes. As Lori just mentioned, who's chair of the ethics committee, everyone has to take the conflict of interest and the oath. Procedures for dealing with that only apply to some and not others. So let us move. Does somebody want to move to introduce?
I'll move.
Oh.
Who's that? Andrew? Andrew's hand is up, moves to introduce. And we have the language in here. It is
Page 14.
that's the next one. It is ordinance number 2023-9-1. Ordinance to amend the ethics ordinance to expand the definition of official to include members of all committees. Andrew moves to what are we doing?
To introduce.
To introduce. Okay, thank you. We
And
have
I
a-
will say,
And we have a second. All in favor of moving to introduce? 3. Is it a no or,
I'm going to say no,
Abstain?
but may I explain why?
yeah, please.
Okay.
So what was that, a no or abstain?
It's a no.
No, okay,
Um,
recorded.
Yeah.
3 to
Okay.
1.
Yeah. And.
I agreed with you the first time.
I know, and it's no reflection. I
But
see,
which one? The first time?
The first time.
I see Lori. I was a liaison, a former liaison to the ethics committee. I know what work and diligence they put into their committee. I'm very respectful of that. I enjoyed working with the committee. It's nothing personal. I just think it's unnecessary. Lori as a person just offered to run down the street and let my kids in my own house. So we're on a good level here, but I think it's unnecessary at this time. I feel like it's kind of a bad penny issue. It has a lot of residents, a portion of the community, it's quite raw for them. And so out of respect, I'm not going to vote.
And it's raw because
Can I?
it harms volunteerism.
I mean, there is a significant portion.
Who say that,
Yeah.
but yet, if you look at the people who volunteered, a number of the people who volunteered are people who signed, who circulated and ginned up the petition, so
Yeah.
that's inconsistent.
Well-
Can I just say just a few quick words? First of all, I was surprised, as many others, on the Zoom, that this was being brought up again. I was disappointed when it failed in our previous attempt to consider it. But I agree 100% that it brings consistency and it actually provides due process and for those volunteers that are on committees that are not protected by this right now. I think there was a lot of alarmist rhetoric during this process. And when you read it and when you listen to an explanation of it by our counselor, it does nothing but protect villagers. There's not going to be villager on villager or resident on resident attacks because of this. It just brings consistency. So that's why I'm going to continue to support it.
And
Thank
I'm
you.
respectful of all of you supporting it. I'm not sold. I'm sorry. And
Yeah,
I'm
well,
sticking to my-
Since we have formally agreed on this, I can understand your position. Okay, so we have adopted that. Okay, moving on.
Introduced.
We voted to
We-
introduce
And we
it,
voted to introduce. That's the point. Okay.
Yeah. and so that won't actually come up for a vote for another
Right.
2 meetings.
Okay,
Yeah.
and may I ask a question? Does
Yeah.
that restart the clock on comments or is that just from residents?
Petition.
Well-
Petition?
Oh, God.
I'm just wondering,
right now, we will get residents' comments at the
Okay,
end.
all right.
Okay,
But as far as this goes,
Mhm.
it has to be
Procedural.
introduced. It has to be introduced and for at least 30 days.
Yeah.
The next council meeting is 29 days away,
Yeah.
so it would be the following meeting.
and we
when
will
it actually
have
be voted on.
survey results
With the
in
survey.
hand at the time of when we come to vote on it. So if people are concerned that they want to hear residents' views, we will have the opportunity to do so. Okay, treasury report. Our treasurer is off doing global government at the United Nations. And so it falls on me to give as a former treasurer, treasurer's report. Everything is copacetic. The money's coming in, the money's going out, nothing unusual, everything more or less in track. Our manager we've had some this gets in the weeds of financial issues, of timing of events. We get our credit card statement by mail. By the time the credit card statement arrives by mail, we go through the process of paying it, it's already overdue. So they cut off our credit and we can't pay our bills. So we are trying to figure out a way that meets our auditor's requirement, that meets our requirements for good financial practices to pay our bills on time. And so we're working through that right now. But until we get that solved, we're running into this problem of late bills and credit being cut off. Anything to add on that?
No, that's about
Okay.
sums it up. We bank with Truist. That's our checking account and credit card. And from the other municipalities in the area, they also don't enjoy working with Truist. It's very, very difficult to make the payment. It's very, very difficult. You know, we've sent the payment several weeks ago and it still hasn't arrived there.
Right.
They don't accept online payments from our
Then-
bill
right,
payment
then,
system.
Our billing company or our payments company, Bill.com, sends it by mail. So by the time things happen, it's too late. So
I have a solution.
We
We
have
just
it-
gotta make sure it's okay.
yeah,
by
we
the
have to
account.
make sure it's legal. Nobody's gonna go to jail. Michael mentioned that we did have, or he had meetings with our auditors to get our auditing process started. Last year it was horrible. Our manager had left. We had bills and invoices and things not matching. Hopefully, everything will go smoothly this year. So that's the treasurer's report. Everything looks good. Okay, finally, let's get back to residents. Do we have any residents who have any final comments? Keith has his hand up.
Yeah.
People in the room take precedent.
I just wanted to bring Andrew back in here. I wanted to ask Andrew about the games on Saturday. You were concerned about thunderstorms. Maybe a moot point because the fields are gonna be too wet to play. So there may not be any games at all to be concerned about. I'm concerned about the Commanders game on Sunday afternoon. I think maybe that's gonna be okay.
Okay, so Andrew, if you heard that, you may be washed out.
Okay, there we go.
Okay,
I returned my DC United tickets for Saturday evening, but I was hoping my boys would be able to play their game in the afternoon, but if not,
Okay.
we'll just hunker
I
down here.
don't think so.
okay,
And Arthur wanted to wish him a safe trip,
Right.
wonderful trip,
off to Italy,
with the emphasis on the safety.
right.
Um,
Okay, I see Hiromi had her hand up earlier and it's up again. Please go.
It might be Doug.
Go.
Hi,
Yeah, here we
I know that Doug is also online. I just wanted to make a comment. I understand that it's about 3419 Cummings construction rear deck issue. Just to point out that interpreting the code this way, I understand there's some legal issues here, but would truly encourage the double decker to avoid the lot coverage, which is contrary to the spirit of the code, which ordinance, which is to make, to prevent like Mac mansions specifically, in proportion to the lot coverage, what the lot size and the lot coverage. So just wanted to point that out to you. But and then also in addition, that house picture is already on the Redfin. And from what I see from the Redfin pictures, again, it's pictures. we don't have the real construction, real thing yet on the site. But it does look like has a ceiling. It does not look like the ceiling is element. It's, you know, it goes through all this rainwater. When it's built and when you do inspect, and if the ceiling over the first floor deck is not truly element free, you know, then there will be a problem. So just again, wanted to point that out. It just
Okay.
doesn't look like element free ceiling over the first floor deck. So there is, you know, there could be an issue there. Again, we don't know until it's actually built.
Okay, thank you. Other, Marty?
Thanks.
Okay.
I want to give precedence to Doug if he wants to follow up on what Hiromi just said, and then I'll follow Doug, if that makes sense. Doug, did you want to go first?
Well, I appreciate that, Marty. Yes, thank you. And I just wanted to clarify, just for those of you on the call, especially since there are people on the call who may not have all the background on this, why are Hiromi and I focused on this deck? And the reason is because whether or not this affects the lot coverage calculation affects whether affects compliance with the code in the following way, not only in terms of the code's requirements on how lot coverage is calculated, but section 7401 of the code, the purpose and application of residential building standards, says specifically that the purpose is to encourage appropriately sized construction in keeping with lot sizes and character of the village, and to minimize the flow of stormwater from lots by encouraging the maintenance of open spaces and the reduction of impervious surfaces. So if the village is applying the code in a way that incentivizes the construction of double decks instead of a single level covered deck as a way to obviate lot coverage restrictions, then it is not applying the code consistent with the requirements specified in the purpose and application section of the code as it applies to residential building standards. So that's, I just wanted to close the loop there. That's why we're focused on this, because it's not about just about this construction project and this specific deck. It's about what the village will be telling developers they can do to obviate the village code in the future, and will be saying that it is allowable and encouraged and incentivized. So I just want to make clear the full implications of this decision. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Marty, we're back to you.
Thank you. And I have to say, you know, as a sort of neutral observer on this, that I think what Doug and Hiromi just said really is important, because it seems to me that the current interpretation of having a double deck being okay where a single roof deck would not be, is a loophole big enough to drive a construction truck through. And I'm sure developers will seize on that and do that. We will see that done throughout. And I don't want Morton's Additions to get the reputation of being asleep at the wheel, that we allow something like this. The whole purpose here is to minimize the lot coverage, the footprint, to a reasonable size, partly for the character of the village, but partly to save trees, and mostly, I think, to save us from the flooding that's happening when you put the maximum size house on a lot. Really affects the stormwater and the underground water too. So this is really an important issue, and if the current interpretation of the law would allow it, I would strongly urge the council to tighten up that and close that loophole in the building code. Arthur, you'd said at the last council meeting you were willing to look at some revisions of the code, and boy, this seems like a loophole we really have to close. So please, I think this is pretty darn serious. My second comment was to go back to the weather report from Keith. We're going to have torrential rains on Saturday, And that is an excellent opportunity. I hate to ask anybody to put their raincoat on and boots, but Katie, can you take a picture of the flooding on Taylor Street Saturday afternoon and evening? And I know that people down in Quincy are going to take a picture of the flooding down in Quincy and the dead end of Bradley, because going to get a lot of water as well, all the places that get flooded. And I'm not asking Michael to come in on Saturday afternoon with your boots and your rain gear, but I would like to ask the council members, to the extent that you can, to actually document the flooding problems. We have a opportunity. We know it's coming. It's going to be daylight. And I'm concerned, for one thing, about the way the intersection at Brookville and Taylor floods with all the water that's now pouring down from across Brookville. And, the sediment that we get in the intersection is a hazard. It makes cars skid when they're trying to stop. And, after the water recedes, there's this residue left all the time that we have to clean up of what's coming down the hill. And of course, it's all flooding down into Taylor too. And partly that's because there are bigger houses now up along Taylor Street across Brookville from us, which again affects the water coming down. So this is an opportunity to really document our flooding problems. And I know residents probably who have their driveways and basements flooding will document it. But I really would like us to take this opportunity to let the water, stormwater and streamwater committee have photographs as records of what happens in a torrential rain. So
Marty,
we all have, again, it goes back to fact-based governance.
I think
know.
that everybody who's sitting out there, get your cameras ready. Get ready to go out on Saturday or Sunday, take pictures.
Orders from the city.
Okay, any other, is that Susan Kahn's hand up?
Yes, thank you. I was just going to say something similar, that just from listening to what Doug and Hiromi were saying, it sounds like this, the enforcement of our code is somehow, the way we're enforcing it is actually undercutting some of our objectives and incentivizing the opposite to happen, according to what they're saying. And I was thinking, this is the type of thing that could be really useful to have some follow-up on. And I was wondering maybe if Doug and Hiromi are already connected with the stormwater or flooding, that committee that was set up to deal with that sort of thing. I wonder if they could, if that would be a productive place for that conversation.
They were not able to join the committee, but the others are well aware of these issues. But I would like to have Michael and Ron and Doug review. When we talk about covered deck, it's not just covered deck, it's covered
porches, breezeways, steps,
breezeways. There's a whole list of things. We have had a customary usage and definition of what covered means for all of those. We may want to go back and take a look as to how we define that. Right now, it means a roof. We may want to take a different look at it, but this has been our customary usage and definition. Any other? Did I see another? Is that a?
No.
No, that's it.
I had a resident reach out to
Oh,
me
please,
that
yeah.
couldn't attend tonight because it's past their bedtime. They're our youngest residents, the students of the neighborhood. They wanted me to bring an issue to our attention, the village manager's attention. On the first day of school, apparently, Section 3 got an ice cream truck and treated the kids of Section 3 walking home from school, but turned away their pals. This is what I'm hearing.
Turned away non-residents.
Turned away non-residents. And there were a lot of hurt feelings and tears, and the first day of school is hard enough as it is. So one of the residents, my student resident, their parent asked if it'd be possible for us to do a joint, maybe go half and half with them, or
get the party committee involved.
Represented, but it is something to consider. I mean, and it's also a little, concerning here, because whenever we have our events, we don't card people and check if they're being residents at our events. But this was a sore subject, and they brought it up, and they asked if I could just report that. I mean, ice cream, we all screamed for ice cream.
Nice.
And
way to start school.
I saw our CEC chair, superstar chair.
With AJ and we'll set a time.
Well, or whatever, vendor, but I had a question though, on that because, you know, a lot of kids walk from our neighborhood that same way. So I think it was at Gazebo Park. So I don't know about the logistics of that, but I just wanted to point that out, that that is the main thoroughfare of kids walking home, especially.
Well, Katie, we do things over here. Everybody's welcome, as you know.
I know. And thank you for being on the scene for not one, but 2 movie nights in the last month. So thank you, Keith, again.
Okay.
Thanks for raising that, Katie. And
Yeah.
I was aware of that and I took note of it and plan to have a conversation with their manager about that and figure out why that was the case. I think asking children for their addresses
Yes.
pretty
Well, you're
strange.
kind of told not to do that.
Yeah,
but-
that's-
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, anything else? Before so no more resident comment, I think we are time
One
to
last
adjourn.
comment.
What's that?
One last comment.
What?
A lot of people don't realize that Michael does a walk on Friday. I'm gonna try to join him tomorrow. And we'd like to get more people to do that, especially with the hot, humid weather on the wane.
Right.
And the rear view mirror.
Okay.
Good night, Lori.
Thank you.
Good night.
Keith.
Good night, Susan. Katie.
Night.
We
And
are
Arthur.
going to adjourn the open meeting and
Thank you.
move to go into a closed meeting to discuss personnel issues. So we need to have a motion to adjourn the open meeting.
You have a piece of paper.
Yeah, I have it here.
Okay.
So I'll move to close the open session.
And we are going to go under general provisions of Article 3-305 to discuss the appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, discipline, or other personnel issues. Personnel matters. Okay, we have a second to go into, to close and then go.
Oh, Andrew raised his hand.
Oh.
Andrew, your hand is up. Good. So, meeting adjourned. And we will be going into closed session in